Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in the series, In the Light of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace and blessings of Allah be on each and every one of you. Dear viewers, we'll be looking at some questions from women who have written in this segment with some questions which are particularly relating to women. Of course, for males who are viewing, it's also useful to pass this information on to your wives, daughters, sisters, etc. The first question comes to us from a sister, Wafa Kasime. She writes from Dubai, can women lead other women in compulsory prayers or for Taraweeh prayers? Could you please give the evidence? The issue of women leading other women in compulsory prayers is one about which the vast majority of the Muslim schools of Islamic law hold is perfectly permissible. I know it is common in the Indian subcontinent, in India and Pakistan, following the Hanafi school of Islamic law, that women will pray separately. They don't pray in congregation. However, when one looks at the evidence, if one goes to the hadiths, one finds clear, authentic narrations of Aisha and other wives of the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, leading the women in congregational prayer. And when they did so, they led standing in one line, and the woman leading the prayer would not stand in front, as in the case of men. In the prayer of men, the men form a row, and then the imam stands in front. In the case of the woman, the imam will stand in the middle amongst the line, but she will read the Quran, recite the Quran, recite the parts of the prayer, and the women will follow her in prayer. So this is authentically related that the Aisha and other wives of the Prophet Muhammad and other companions, female companions of the Prophet Muhammad did lead women in prayer. So naturally, this was the case of prayer at home, compulsory prayers, etc. Voluntary prayers like Taraweeh, etc. are also permissible. The second question comes to us from Sister Nasreen Hermano. She writes, can women bleach their skin, streak, or color their hair? Well, the coloring of hair, this is not forbidden in Islam. Bleaching of skin, of course, this is something questionable. If one has a complexion which one doesn't like, to try to bleach it and make it another complexion, this is really not acceptable. If one bleaches the hair which is on the skin, so it's not visible, it's another case where women, for example, may have hair on their face, and rather than shave it or to pluck it, which then causes the hair to grow back darker and more bristly, they choose to bleach that hair. This is permissible also. As to, as I said, coloring or streaking the hair, from the point of view of imitating the ways of the disbelievers, this is of course something which should be avoided if it's just a fashion statement. This is the fashion to have streaked hair this way, or to have purple colored hair or green colored hair. It's just amongst the punks, etc. in Europe and England, and America. To be running after these type of fashions, this of course Islamically is detestable. However, just as for a difference, a woman wishes to color her hair, parts of her hair, whatever, it's permissible. If dyeing is permissible, which Prophet did allow and encourage that the believers dye their hair, then the dyeing in the sense of giving it a different color, etc., is permissible. What is not allowed is for the woman to wear wigs of any kind, for any excuse, whether she has lost her hair, it has fallen out or whatever, to wear a wig for a woman is not permissible. The second question, which Sister Hermano, that is Nasreen, writes, is can women cut their hair? The cutting of the hair of the woman, this is permissible. Again, you know, all these areas here, where we're not dealing with a religious act, we have a general rule regarding acts. If an act is fundamentally a religious act, then it is considered to be prohibited, forbidden, unless there is specific evidence in the Sharia, in the divine law, to permit it. Meaning that all acts of worship are forbidden except those specifically sanctioned by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On the other hand, our day-to-day acts, which are not specifically related to religion, but are just our own social, cultural, etc. practices, all of these, or the foods we eat, all these different types of things, they're all permissible unless there comes specific evidence to prohibit a particular act. This is the general rule to follow. You want to weigh. Because oftentimes, you know, a person may want to do something, and then others will say, okay, what's the evidence to do this? Now, if this thing is not from the acts of worship, and to say you must bring evidence before you can do this thing, it would make life so difficult that virtually we would not be able to live. Because there are so many things that we do on a day-to-day basis, which you may be hard-pressed to find any evidence for from divine revelation to support or permit, then it would mean that our lives would become very, very, very uncomfortable. And this is not Islam. Prophet ﷺ had said, Ad-Dinu Yusr, the religion is easy. This is the general approach. The religion has been made easy by Allah, by the Prophet, may God's peace and blessings be upon him. So many concessions given. A person who is fasting and traveling, they don't have to fast. Prayers are shortened. You know, so many concessions to take into account the needs of human beings. So when we look at any of these issues, we should first and foremost decide, is this a religious issue or is it a social issue? If it is a religious issue, then our rule is, where is the evidence to do this? If it is a social issue, then our rule is, where is the evidence to prohibit us from doing this? And on the basis of that, inshallah, God willing, life will be a lot easier. Now, back to our question at hand. Can women cut their hair? Yes. It's not a religious issue. They can cut their hair. Some of the companions recommended that a woman making Hajj or Umrah, when she has to cut her hair, because the Prophet ﷺ had said that for men is the shaving of the head or cutting the hair, and for women there is cutting of the hair. So he did not permit women to shave their heads. Right? I mean, this is what is understood from the statement. Though he has not specifically prohibited, but understood from the statement that for women there is the cutting, that really the woman should not shave her head. So she may cut her hair. So how is it cut? What this companion suggested, because the cutting of the hair in general in Hajj and Umrah, you know, people have turned it into a variety of different un-Islamic ways. Some will take a little piece of their hair, 3 hairs, and cut these 3 hairs and say, okay, I've cut my hair. You know, this is based on a linguistic argument, where some scholars, specifically this is in the Shafi'i school of Islamic law, some scholars argued what constitutes cutting of the hair. Hair in Arabic means 3 or more strands. If it's 1 strand, it's not called hair, it's called a piece of hair, if you want to translate it like this, sha'ra. If it's two, it's sha'ratan, two pieces of hair. But when it's called hair as a collective noun, it has to be 3 strands or more. So, since the minimum to be defined as hair is 3 strands, then they said if a person only cut 3 strands, they have fulfilled the basic requirement of cutting. However, though this is, linguistically sound, legalistically argued, the reality of the matter is that the cutting of the hair in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions was cutting of hair over the whole head. When you go to get your hair cut, it's not the barber doesn't take a piece of your hair and cut it and say, okay, pay up your 10 dirhams and, your hair has been cut. No. What you understand when you go in there to get your hair cut is that he's going to lower the hair over the whole of your head. That is the cutting of the hair, as understood in general, and that is what it is in Hajj. The companions suggested for the women, where their hair may be tied in braids, that they take the braids, which is now collecting all the hair over their head, and they cut off a minimum of the length of the joint of a finger. This is what was suggested by the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, may God peace and blessings be upon him. If a woman wishes to cut more, they need at least a joint to be considered having cut their hair. But if they wish to cut more, they may. And in general, a woman may cut her hair as long as she doesn't cut it to such a degree that she now appears to be like a man, and that she's not blindly following the fashions. Princess Diana has cut her hair this way, so she's going to put her hair that way. This one has her hair that Madonna has her way that way, and she's going to be just running after fashion. This is not liked in Islam. With that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment of the program, and I hope that you continue to watch our oncoming segments. And I bid you now farewell. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.